Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and we have another incredible guest. Super excited about this. Honestly, I got one little paragraph about what he has done and thought, I do want to interview this person because I have some questions regarding his area of expertise. So he's a recent author of a book called Blue Collar Cash. So if you haven't heard of it, go look it up on Amazon, or maybe if you go to his website, which is a better place to get it in my opinion, go to his website, which he'll talk about. Go listen to the book, read the book, and learn from the book. But I wanted to find out what was his story. And a lot of people feel like they're in blue collar work, but blue collar work also, in a lot of respects, is actually dying. Like there's a massive need for blue collar workers in our society. So I'm curious about that, and that's why I wanted to interview you. But go ahead and tell us, Ken. He's out of Ohio. Ken, why did you tell us about your history and how you got into what you're doing, and then why did you choose to write a book, and try and pass that knowledge down to the next generation?
Well, thank you, Sam, for having me. I really appreciate it. I think where it really started was, I had four brothers in a very small house, and a father who was an ex-Marine, and he worked at a grocery store chopping lettuce and making $14,000 a year, and it was one of those things where the house had a lot of discipline in it, and we tried to make things as fun as we could. We didn't have a lot of money, so we tried to create a good times however we could. And if you wanted something within our family that was beyond clothing and shelter and basic needs and basic fun types of things, you had to go out and get it, find a way to get it. So if I wanted a new really nice baseball glove, I would have to find a way to go make money and make that happen. And that was kind of how we were raised. So we had a lot of odd jobs when we were little. I worked at a bakery. I worked at a bowling alley. I worked, did a paper route like everybody else. I had various landscaping jobs. And then I guess my first full-time gig was when I was 15, and my high school shared a fence with a construction, an industrial park that had a lot of construction companies in it. And we would cut through a hole in that fence, go through the industrial park to get to the corner carryout and just hang out after school. And I remember walking through these construction companies. There was a lot of energy and a lot of moving parts and people and equipment and things. And it just seemed like a cool atmosphere. So I wanted my first full-time job as much as I could. I wanted to buy my first used car, maybe take my girlfriend out for pizza, or, go bowling with my buddies. So I approached one of these companies and said, "What do you do here?" I knew somebody that had worked there, and they were basically ditch diggers. So I said, "Well, I'm qualified to do that." And so I dug ditches in the summertime, and then I worked inside making phone calls in the wintertime, dug ditches in the summertime when I wasn't in school. And I kind of learned the whole front and back of the house that way, as they say. And so when it came time, when I turned 18, it was like, am I going to college? What am I doing? And they came to me and they said, "We want to open franchises around the Midwest. And since you know so much about the front and the back, we thought you might want to be involved in that." So at the young age of 18, I got into a suitcase and lived out of a suitcase for 3 or 4 years, opening up franchises from scratch. Basically learning how to make a business run and making mistakes with other people's money, which was really good. So it was great because I learned quickly how to establish something from nothing and then move on and repeat it again. And that was really the driver for me, because I learned how to leverage not only my time but other people's time, and I learned how to leverage equipment pieces and parts and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So after being, in that kind of environment for 3 or 4 years, I decided it was time to do my own thing. So I moved out to Toledo, Ohio, which is on the western end of Lake Erie, and we opened our own company. We started with 6 people, and that was in 1986, and I think we're up to like 200 now. So it's been a hell of a ride.
When you say your own company, so you started your own company, do you have 200 and some odd employees or 200 different locations? Like, did you go back into the franchising model with your company?
No, we opened up a franchise of what we were doing, and only we did it for ourselves this time, not for somebody else. And we started with 6 people, and again, we're at nearly 200 people now in a couple of different locations, and we've done other things. We've expanded that into, I build office buildings and rent them and lease them, and I have a housing development in Branson, Missouri, where we build houses on a resort lake. We were in construction chemicals, lots of different things that all within the same lane, if you will, but expansion and moving in and moving out so that I could create more opportunity for people here in my primary company. And it's been 40 some years. It's been great.
That's awesome. And at what point did you marry the girlfriend, and did you ever have children? What does that look like now?
Yeah. So I got married in 1986, right before we moved out here, as a matter of fact. And I came out first, and she followed a few months after that, after there was some stabilization to my life here. And then my daughter's 27. I have one girl. She's 27 years old. She's about to have her own baby. So I'm going to be a grandfather here in the next couple of weeks, which is really cool. And she was kind of the inspiration for the book along the way. So it's been quite the experience. That's for sure.
So how did she inspire the book? Like, what about her and your maybe relationship with her was the inspiration for that?
Well, when she was 12, she came down with a real serious illness that we had to battle for like 5 years. I mean, it was a really scary time for her mother and I, and for her. And she's good. She's safe. She came through it. But I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy to go through something like that. But you spend a lot of time in, hospital rooms and oncology offices and radiology rooms and ultrasound and doctor's office. I mean, you have a lot of time to sit around and think while you're waiting for things to happen. So I just kind of thought, what could I give her from a knowledge standpoint? Now, mind you, she's 12. That what should she be chasing in life? Like, what should we all be chasing in life? And I kept coming back to the 3 words: comfort, peace, and freedom. We all have our own level or our own nirvana, if you will, that where we point to it and we create it in our minds, and hopefully we put it down on paper where we say, you know what, if I could live like that, that would be really cool. If I could live that way spiritually, if I could live generously, if I could live in a healthy way, what type of house would I want? What type of car was what I want? What type of pets would I want? What type of vacations would I take? What would be my give back moment? All those things, you kind of build a brochure for your life. And then I believe that that's how you begin. You begin with the brochure in life, and then you find one of the many ways that you can go make that happen.
I love that. So perfect. That was a good lead in. So I want to go back a little bit here and talk about your 4 brothers. So I'm the 7th of 11, and we were, I would say, in certain respects, we were raised similar in that we had my parents raised us all to be pretty entrepreneurial. They bought a broken down house by the time I was born. They bought a house and we basically rehabbed the house ourselves as a family. And so we all learned very early in life certain skills, specifically around the trades and building. And so we all came out of that. I came out of that realizing I didn't ever want to be in the trades. But then I have other companies one's a safety manager, it's not siblings, safety manager for Oakland. One owns his own electric company. One owned a HVAC company. 2 of them co-owned that. I mean, like, they've done stuff. Another brother who's kind of building his own little city thing in Utah. So like lots of industrious families and individuals out of our family. So I think there's elements of that. What was the impact of that childhood on your brothers, and what did they choose to do with their life?
Well, we all ended up becoming entrepreneurs in our own right, and we all chose to open our own companies and do similar things in construction. And I think, very early on, when you have no money and you want to have fun, you begin to do things like you go out and you play in creeks, or you walk paths, or you ride your bikes in the woods, or you play catch, or you build things, or you wreck things and fix them. There's a lot of that going on. So we're very, very independent. We planted all of our own trees, and we raked our own beds, and we did all that stuff. So we knew our way around tools, and we knew how to leverage the labor of other people, and to a mutual benefit of everybody. And so, yeah, it was pretty natural for us to go to that next step and just kind of launch into our own businesses. And that's what we've done. And again, I think, and this is a lesson for everybody, if you can ask yourself one question, that is, what do you want your life to look like? I mean, if you ask yourself that, and then draw that out in enormous detail and vivid color and absolute, unique to you and you only. And you create a picture of that and literally hang it on your wall. And I know people talk about vision boards a lot, but vision boards aren't any good if you don't have them personalized to you, and you're not always tweaking them a little bit, and they're not hanging up there where you can see it multiple times a day, and you wake up thinking about it and you go to sleep thinking about it. That's a true vision board, because a vision board is not something you just see. A vision board is something you download. And the more your brain sees something, I had the good fortune to be talking with Jarek Robbins, who's Tony Robbins' son. And we talked about the fact that when you see something and you see it often, the electrodes that create those visions in your brain, they start to speed up and get closer and closer to each other, to the point where they become almost one thought. And what happens when that eventuality happens is your brain kind of thinks that it already owns that thing. So what it does is it kind of creates this involuntary movement in your body and in your thoughts and in the things that you do to go get that thing. And so visions are enormously powerful, much more powerful than we give them credit for, because now there's science to back up the fact that it's not just the law of attraction. It's an actual physical response that you use, maybe even involuntarily or subconsciously, to go get those things that you have on that vision board. And that's why they're so powerful.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. So did you guys, let's talk about this actually for a little bit, the visionary aspect. Cause I've talked or we all read books and read probably Think and Grow Rich is the most common one that is quoted when it's talking about the law of attraction and how that's going to work in your life. How soon did you start putting together your vision of what you wanted your future to look like? And how much of that original vision have you already accomplished?
Great question. So when I was 15, 16, 17, my father just then started to become successful. And he started living the way he wanted to live. And I could see what he was doing. I could see how he paid some debts down. I could see how he upgraded his transportation. I could see how he upgraded his houses. I could see how he upgraded the way he spent his free time and all of that. So that was one way for me to start working on my own vision board. And the other one was the gentleman that I worked for. He was a pretty flamboyant guy. And so he actually asked me to help him do a lot of the things that he wanted to show up into his life. Like I was kind of like almost like a fixer for him. If he wanted something, I would take care of it. And so I got to kind of live in that world a little bit without even having it myself. And so these were great inspirations. And I always say, if you want to live a certain way, find someone that's living that way and just emulate what they do. I mean, just watch how they work, they think, they approach things, the respect they give to things. And remember, it's not just the thing that you want, because, you know, I have a bunch of cars, but they're just sitting in a garage doing nothing if I don't use them. And if I use them to create really cool memories, like driving somewhere with my wife or with my buddies or racing them around a track or, you know, whatever, that's the thing you're after. It's not the item or the thing that makes you happy. It's the memories that you create with those things. So, yeah, those were all big drivers for me. And the people that need the vision boards are the ones that need to practice their vision to the point of manifestation. Okay. Mm-hmm. Some people have those visions running around in their head, and that's good enough. There they are. They are driving them and their actions towards an eventuality. Well, I always had brochures laying around of this or of that. My first Porsche took me 7 years to buy, and I had 7 different brochures on my nightstand. And I wouldn't obsess over it, but I had them there, and I kind of, through osmosis, in fact, the guys at the dealership would laugh because year one, they thought, this kid's nuts. He said he's coming back in 7 years to buy his first car. And I said, yeah, I'm gonna. And then year 2, here I come. And the guy's like, wow, you're back. In year 3 and year 4, by year 5, he said to me, you know, I actually believe you're going to do this. I mean, I actually believe that this is going to happen for you. Year 6, I walked in, I ordered the car and got it in year 7. And they were beside themselves that I actually had this 7-year plan to do this. But I had a specific reason for wanting it to be 7 years, and it just worked out that way. So, yeah, I think these things are enormously powerful. I think that's what makes Elon Musk and people like Stephen Jobs and, you know, Mr. Branson, you know, from Virgin Airlines and all the people that are pioneers. What makes them different than all of us is they give respect and use and pay homage to constantly the visionary side of their brain, where I think some of the rest of us we live reactionary lives where we react to stimulus like it's cold outside, I better put a coat on, you know what I mean? Instead of proactively living our lives or proactively seeing what we want for ourselves.
Yeah, no, I think that's super true. And I love that you were, if we go back to your childhood, you were going through this construction site and seeing it. Okay, that's something that could be done. It's interesting. Do you feel like you fell into the construction world, or was that more of an intentional choice into it, or is there say, hey, that's something I'm interested in right now, I may as well go see if I can get a job there because I got to get a job somewhere and that one's close by?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So back in the day, and when I went to high school, there was such a thing called shop class, and you could walk down the hallway and you could see someone changing the transmission on a Mustang here, or look right and you could see someone milling a leg for a table, or look over here, you could see somebody welding, or someone doing someone's hair or nails, or someone cooking or whatever. And that was where most people naturally discovered how cool the trades were. And they kind of just morph their way into doing it and onward to their careers, right? Other people, they learned from their parents or their parents' businesses or whatever. But for me, it was like, I loved being outside. I loved creating things because I'd grown up doing it. I mean, we built countless tree forts, when we were younger. And so it's just something that I enjoyed doing. I enjoyed being outside. I enjoyed being with groups of people working, and in some cases leading them when I could. And so, yeah, for me, it was a natural thing to do some type of construction thing. Digging ditches wasn't the most glamorous, but I had done beautiful landscape. I had jobs at landscape companies that did beautiful landscaping for huge houses. And so, I had a lot of the taste of the creative side of construction as well. In this particular case, it was throughout the rest of my high school years. It was a way to make really good money and then use that money to obtain some of the things that I wanted. So, what people don't realize about blue collar work is you get to control your input, your output, the quality of that output. You get to control the pace. You get to control your day, your schedule, your time. You get to control your financial gain. And you don't get that in a lot of office environments where you're on the 15th floor in some cubicle selling medical supplies. I mean, you just don't. So, what people don't quite understand is that side of controlling your life and not being at the behest of all these other factors that are out of your control in some of these office environments. So, and like you said earlier, with the fact that supply and demand is the most efficient law in the world, you can take advantage of that. And where supply is low and demand is high, that's where the money goes. And that's what you're seeing now.
Yeah, I think my brother would quote to me this statistic, said the average age of like a plumber or an HVAC person right now is over 55 years old. Like that's the average age of the person. It's like, how much long? I mean, yeah, even if they live till they're 70 and they do that, who's coming back to backfill that industry? It's the same thing in the financial industry. The average age of a financial professional right now is still over 50 years old. And so who's going to come backfill those trade type industries where there is still need for personal touches to the activity?
I'm going to give you the answer to that. First off, the smart kids that buck the system and say, I'm not going to listen to that college who is only interested in taking my money, and when I graduate could care less what happens to me in my future. I mean, let's put it out there. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Number two, they will sell you degrees that you're never going to use in your life ever. I mean, what's with Eastern European language translation? I mean, really, who's going to use something like that, right? Unless you're going to move to Europe and become some liaison for an international marketing company, I suppose that could be the case. But they sell you these degrees they know you can't use. They don't care about you when you graduate. They say they do, but they really don't. And they don't have a problem oversupplying these unusable degrees to the point where people are in debt and have no jobs when they come out. So what the answer to that question is, those who were naive enough to think college is going to solve all their world problems, they're the ones that are going to graduate with debt and end up swinging a hammer when they can't find a job in their field. Now, I don't have a problem with that because everyone should try something. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I'm not anti-college. If you're going to cut my shoulder open so I can get back out on the golf course, I want you to know everything there is to know about a knife before you come at me with it, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing holds true for teachers and bankers and, lawyers and engineers and architects. But if you're just going to go because someone told you had to, there's a whole nother world out there that you're missing. So the answer is those jobs will get backfilled eventually by people who tried and failed at some dream of a college career. The other one will be the people who are smart enough to say, I see what's going on. I see how some of these people are getting misled and or scammed into doing this. I see that there's a high demand for plumbing in this town. No one's doing it, and there's a need for it. I'm going to jump right into that. Maybe go to a tech or a trade school, or maybe work as an apprentice, or just jump right in. Those are the people that are going to backfill those jobs, and they're going to make a fortune doing it. The thing about that is, everyone thinks that might be a temporary trend, and I don't think so, because the more kids walk around in life with these cell phones in their hand and play Minecraft on that as a substitute for building a real tree fort in their backyard, the less and less people are going to go into these fields. And there's a whole thing about parents babysitting their kids with screens instead of like with themselves and real human experience. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there that are contributing to this. It's going to be that way for a very long time, but I can tell you, for those willing to see that, you're going to have a great life and a great living along the way.
Well, and for you yourself, even, and this was however many years ago, it sounds like you worked in that construction actual, and you fill in where I'm missing, if I am missing anything, but it sounds like you actually did the physical labor for about 3 years till you were 18, maybe 19, but then you switched from that into a sales role primarily and into more of the management side of construction rather than the actual physical labor side. Am I missing something, or is that?
No, I even though I got out of the actual labor, I still had to set these companies up, and I still had to go out and start their initial jobs, and I still had to go out and build out the crews, and I had to do getting the permitting and doing all those things. So while I didn't dig holes every single day, I was still involved in launching these companies to the point where I had to do that physical labor for a few years. You know what I mean? Or let's say 6 months here, 8 months there, a year there. So I still did that work until I was probably 24, 23, 24. And then I came out and opened my own company here in Toledo, and then it started all over again. I mean, you start with 6 people, someone's got to dig a hole, right?
Sure. Yeah,
I was involved in that for a few years, and then morphed my way into management. So you are correct. Eventually that did happen, but not before, I knew what the business end of a digging shovel was. That's for sure.
Was that always part? I say always part of the plan, right? At what point what was the question that you said, you know what, I really should do this for myself. I should stop selling this and helping other people build their companies. I should just go start my own franchise and build it myself.
You just answered it by, that was the very thing. I was actually seeing other people who had various levels of talent become successful.
That's a nice way of putting that, isn't it?
Yeah. And I said to myself, well, my God, why am I making these people successful when I can go do this on my own? So I set up a really powerful vision of what I wanted my life to look like. And I allowed that to drive and push me, and sometimes drag me along to starting my own company. And that's kind of where it ended up. So yeah, I think if you're going to ask what the specific question was, it was, what do I want my life to look like? And can I build that life myself? And right. The answer to both of those was yes. So that's what I did.
Was there a specific experience? I don't know, at least for me, I have very, very clear memories of these decisions in my life. And I can probably count like 5 of them that have really changed my entire life. So I'm thinking maybe you're on a job, you've gotten an art. I have no idea what the thing was. If this guy can make money, I should be doing this myself. I should no longer be dealing with this guy. I should be doing it myself. So I don't know what that experience, but what was the thing that that was the moment where you know what, I'm deciding it's time for me to go do this myself, because this is just.
Well, one of the nicest guys that I did this for was a guy who just recently passed away. He was a firefighter in Cleveland, Ohio, and he was done firefighting, and he just wanted to open his own business, and he knew nothing about construction. I mean, other than being a firefighter and having to go in and rescue people, and you learn a little bit about construction when you're fighting fires, that's for sure. But he wanted a construction type franchise, and so I took him to Cincinnati, and we opened this place up, and we built it up to a huge place, and that was one of them. I thought, you know what? It's not that I'm, denigrating him because he didn't have the talent, but he didn't have the awareness, at least, of what we did. And I showed him how to do it. And I said, well, if I can convert this gentleman into being a successful person, and I didn't do it all by myself, but I mean, I did a lot of the work, then could I not do this on my own? So that was one of them. The other one was when I was younger, when I was really young, my father's partner wanted some landscaping done at his house, and we were really heavy into doing that. I remember going to his house with the 2 other guys, and I had 2 jobs going on that weekend, side jobs. And I remember leaving these 2 gentlemen who were happy as clams to make $5 an hour. They were thrilled. And I was charging the client $8 an hour. So here I am on another job site making money while these 2 guys were working at $5 an hour, and I was getting $8 an hour on each one of them from the customer. Now, I didn't have a lot of things to pay for back then, like dump trucks and all that stuff. I worked out of the backseat of my car. But that was a pretty cool thing, that you could leverage labor. Everyone was happy, and you could leverage labor and things like trees, and you could mark up the product that you were buying at wholesale. That all just was amazing to me. You could buy a tree for $30 and sell it for $45 because you bought it wholesale. and you're delivering it and you're planting it, and then you can charge for the planting. So it was kind of cool to see that you could create those revenue pathways. And that I was like, well, if I can do this with 2 people, imagine 200. So
yeah, it's kind of interesting. One of the things that young experiences I had was, I don't know, I don't have a clear time that this happened, but I did decide I don't want to do homework anymore. We were homeschooled, and my parents told me you have to go get a full-time job or do schoolwork. And so I stopped doing schoolwork when I was 11 primarily, and went and started working at a honey extracting plant full-time and worked for $5.15 an hour. And it was like, this is horrible, but it taught me a lot of things. But then after that, the honey was really bad on my hands. So I went into being a brickie for a construction company, this guy. And I did that for 3 years. By the time I was 13, I was the one who was managing the crew. There was 3 or 4. I know it's funny, but like I'm 13.
That's awesome.
And I'm managing this crew of 2 or 3 adults. I'm getting paid $7.50, which sure is better than $5.50, but they're getting paid $10.50 and $12.
Right.
And the idea that when you can tell your employee, don't tell your other person what you're getting paid, like that's a load of crap. You might sign a paper that says you're going to do that, but nobody obeys that.
No,
unless you're embarrassed about what you're getting paid. But like nobody does that. So anyways, as he's got off doing his own thing, making money on us, which again, I'm not against. If I find out what they're getting paid, I'm like, wait a second. I'm the one managing the crew. I'm the one with the plans. I'm the one telling people what to do, when to do it, how to do it. The only thing I can't do at that point, I'm 13, is I can't operate the diamond saw to cut the brick.
Sure.
But neither could the other people. And so that's the only part that he came back and did was we'd lay it out, we'd mark it up, and he'd come in for 15 minutes or whatever, cut all the brick for the edges, and we'd be good. So I have a conversation with him. I'm like, look, man, I've loved working it's like a year and a half in. I've loved working with you, done lots of cool things together, but like, you got to pay me my worth. You got to at least pay me what you're paying them, or I can't do this. And he said, well, they've got families and they've got all this stuff, and like, you can't even drive. So we have to make sure you get to the jobs. And I'm like, I take care of myself. I make sure that I get to my jobs on time, anyways. And I was like, sorry, if you can't like increase my wages, I'm going to have to quit. Like, I just can't do that. So then 2 days later, it was over the weekend, he calls me. He's like, Sam, we're just going to have to let you go. You're fired. I'm like, you can't fire me, dude. I quit already. Like, you can't fire me. I don't know what you're smoking. But anyway, so that was at 12, 13 years old. And then prior to that, we had done a bunch of landscaping for people in our neighborhood. And this person on the street corner, one field over from us, I grew up in Idaho, Parma, Idaho, in this stage of my life. And this is all farmland. Anyways, they said, hey, come over, look at the job, pulling weeds, clean up the flower beds. What do you think it's worth? Well, I'm working $5 an hour at the honey extracting plant. So I'm like, well, it's $5 an hour. I'm not like, it's not even worth my time if it's not $5 an hour. And so we come back to the house, my brother and I, and we're like, yeah, they didn't want to pay us that. Well, that didn't go over well with my mom. So my mom marched us over there. We had to work for free for 2 weeks, and that was miserable. But it did teach me a good lesson that, like, you know what? Sometimes the market is fluctuant, and sometimes you do some things for people at cost or lower than it's worth up front so that they trust you, and then they see your work, and then they're willing to pay you more later, which that person eventually did.
Yeah.
But those are little things that like are really powerful. But that was one time in my life that I was like, I made a decision. I'm worth more than what I'm being paid, and I'm not going to accept less. And that decision at 13 years old has been a guiding principle in all of my employment since then, or careers I've done, even when I'm working in sales, of the knowledge. And so it's like one of those things like, hey, should I be getting paid more? Absolutely. And then what are you going to do about it? Because if you don't do anything about it, then you just resent yourself and everybody else who doesn't pay you enough, So like at some point you got to stand on it and say, look, I do deserve more, and they should pay me more. And so that was a very defining moment. And then the next was I did summer sales selling pest control, and I was in school for neuropsychology, going through getting my degree, headed towards, $300,000 of debt. And I saw that in my future. And I also saw that in 3 months without a degree, knocking doors, I was making over $100,000. And I'm just like, at this point, I'm unemployable because I'm not going to go get a job for that 120 grand in 6 months without a degree. But also I can make that right now without a degree. I'm unemployable. Like, now what? So now what do you do? So it kind of forces you into some level of business ownership when you realize you're unemployable. Which is, I wish more people realize that, and that they had the ability to produce that value. So you go create your own company. And then at what point does your daughter fall into some of these illnesses and maybe the motivation switch to, man, not just what do I want my life to look like, but what do I want to make sure that the people I experience with, am I passing on?
Yeah, well, at the same time, when you have a construction company of 200 people, you do a lot of hiring, obviously. So, I had hired a lot of people, and a lot of those people were, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. So a lot of them required help getting their life started, which is, their first car, their first apartment, getting their driver's license cleaned up. Maybe they're opening up their first checking account or bank account, credit card, that kind of thing. So I became like this involuntary life coach, you know what I mean? This uncle to all these kids.
Well, can I just pause there? Because I think a lot of business owners go into business, and I interview people all the time, and they're like, man, I don't want to do that. I just want to do coaching. And they think that coaching is just enough. And it's like, you need to marry coaching with a widget. In your case, the widget is, but they think that they just want to go do construction, and they don't want to learn leadership and mentorship. And to be successful, it's a dual thing. Everybody needs to learn that. And anybody who thinks they're going to do one without the other, without a widget, is useless. You need a widget and you need the coaching mentorship skills. So anyways, just throwing that in there.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly right. So you find yourself being an almost involuntary life coach. I don't have any letters after my name. I never went to school. I don't have any formal training, but what I did worked. I found ways for people to believe in themselves. I found ways for people to think entrepreneurially, not entrepreneurially. I found ways for people to say, I want to be selfish, meaning I want to get what I need for myself first and for Ken second. And that's okay, because everyone should work for themselves first and the company second, because that's the true driver. You don't live to work. You work so that you can live. So everyone needs to work on what living looks like, and then find a place that you can blossom that within the walls of that company and create the life you want for yourself. Because that again goes back to that ultimate control, which is, what do I want my life to look like? And what's the path what paths can I take to get there? Because as you see yourself gaining on that picture, that brochure, you start to gain more confidence. It's like you lay out a 500 piece puzzle on your dining room table. You can't build that puzzle without the box. The box is the picture. The box is the end game. And so the drawing that I'm telling people to do is the picture on the box of the puzzle. Because as you start to build the pieces, your first thing you're going to do is find all the flat end ones and build the framework, right? And then as you start to infill, you see this picture happening for yourself. You gain more confidence. You're starting to enjoy it more. You play it more. You get at it more. You want to finish it more. You get more aggressive and spend more time doing it. And that's kind of how this thing works with your life. The more success you see, the more confidence you gain, and then the more you want to get after it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So now going into the book, you happened to just write this book, right? It just happened. Poof, you had a book. You're like, no, that's not how it worked. What was the input? Like you mentioned that your daughter kind of inspired it. At what point did you say, you know what, it's time that this is the thing that I'm going to do with my time?
I think as I was writing stories of people that personified comfort, peace, and freedom, I started to figure out, there might be something to this. And my wife even said to me, there's a book here. And I said, she said, you've been doing all these things for your people within the four walls of your company for years now. You need to get this message beyond and to the masses because there's value. And so, yeah, between getting very cathartic and learning more about myself and more about what I thought was important in life with and through Nicole's challenges, and then adding the stories of my friends, and then using the experiences that I have with the people in this building, it was kind of a perfect storm to get together and just start writing this book. So I literally wrote 80,000 words on 12 legal pads, and I still have them. And I wrote it with a pen, and it's one of those things where I wouldn't wake up and go, I'm going to write today. I would just wait until a thought hit me, and then I would grab that thought and run with it for an hour or 2 or 5 hours. I mean, it just depended on where I was at the time. And I've written this book all over the place. I wrote this book at the very same desk as Ian Fleming wrote James Bond in Jamaica, believe it or not. So really? I wrote 2 chapters at the same desk that he used, and his stuff is still sitting there. So it's really cool. The thoughts come to you at all different places, on golf courses, on wherever, and you just take advantage of those thoughts and you start writing them down, and pretty soon you have 80,000 words and you think you got something, and then you have to go find someone who is willing to say, yeah, I think that's good stuff. And so I literally Googled editors in New York and found one that I liked, and he had a whole stable of ghostwriters that could help me clean up what I had done already. And he accepted me, and then we got that done, and we went to an agent. We were lucky to land a very big agent in Manhattan, and then from then on, it went to an auction for different publishers, and the highest bidder came in, and bam, there we go. So yeah. It was kind of crazy how it all happened, because I never really intended this. I never, as much as I see everything else in my life, I didn't see the finished book in my hand. It was just a process I was going along and enjoying, and then all of a sudden I could see it, and yeah, it was pretty cool.
I think that there's a lot of people who have books in them that they just have never thought about sharing. And I think it's amazing how much of the authors that I've interviewed, it really came from somebody else in their life recognizing their gifts and saying, look, you need to share this more widely. Stop being selfish with all of this. You have the stories. People think, I don't know about writing a book. Look, at some point you have lived enough experiences. You just need to tell. Really, a lot of books, you could tell 5 to 10 stories. Then you need to do a little bit of research, not a lot, to take like contemporary world stories that everybody knows, like Elon Musk, like whatever. So there's just like, okay, let's anecdotal stories in there, but then teach the principles. Like, why do you want to share it? So if your guiding thing is, comfort, peace, and freedom, that's all you need. That's a book in and of itself. You don't need tons and tons and tons of principles. You need like 1 or 2. Hey, this is really important to me. Okay, well, why is it important to you? How have you seen it be important to not just you, but other people? How have you helped other people accomplish what's important to you and became important to them? And then what are some other areas of the world that you've seen other people follow a similar pattern and achieve similar results? And that's your book. Like it's 100, 200 pages, 300 pages. Those are long books. Right now, most books, they try and edit it down to be 100, 150 pages because they want it digestible and quick. They don't want encyclopedias, a lot of them now. They want to sell copies and get the message across as fast as possible. And so I think that's incredible. I'm so grateful you did that. If somebody wanted to engage with you more, get the book. You mentioned before the call that you have a coaching program or something for $129.
Yeah, I was actually... I see a lot of people and they have bookshelves and they have a lot of books on the shelves, and you ask them, well, how did that book impact your life? Well, it was a good book. I read it. It was great. But what did you use out of it? Well, I don't remember if I used anything, but it was a great book. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're reading entertainment books, I suppose. But if you're really looking to do something with your life, you want to put those theories into practice in your own life. So I created this course. It's literally 8 45-minute sessions. It goes by fast. It's interactive and it's fun and it's real simple. and it's called The Path to the Path to a Successful Life, and it kind of goes along with the book. So you're reading the book and you're taking the course at the same time, and it's $129. It's not the typical $2,000 courses you see out there. You get a free book with it, and so for $100, you can change your life. And if you go to kenrusk.com, you can see all this there. You can see the book button and the course button, and it's a great thing. And I encourage people to do it. I donate most of the money that I get from this endeavor anyway, because my life was pretty good before I wrote this book, and I'm very blessed and grateful for that. So, yeah, I just know that if you go out there and you buy one of these courses and improve your own life, you're going to improve somebody else's life at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of the end goal. Something you said earlier that I just want to highlight and end with is that you saw your dad leveling up his life, but you said it this way: you saw your dad becoming successful, living the way he wanted to. And I think that that's important. Successful, equating it with living the way you want to, rather than living the way somebody else defines success, is crucial in this process of having a successful life. Your successful life doesn't have to look like the next person's successful life. Your successful life doesn't have to be flashy, flamboyant, or anything, or it doesn't have to be humble in what other people think is humble. If you want to be successful, flashy, go be successful, flashy. If just be you successful, don't be somebody else's successful.
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, if you think of it this way, find one other person on this planet that can name all of your favorite top 20 things. It's impossible. Okay. Not nearly in the same detail. First off, they might get 3, but they're never going to get 20. And they're never going to get them in the same detailed, color, vivid picture, brochure format that you're going to. So you and only you know what this life is like for you. You and only you know what would be your comfort, peace, and freedom level, like I talk about in Blue Collar Cash. You and only you know what that nirvana is. So why are you letting someone else dictate what it might be? Get yourself that cardboard or that poster board. Get yourself a box of crayons or markers or whatever. Sit down in a dark, quiet place. Draw your brochure. Stick it up on the wall, and then watch what happens. You will be so glad you did.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Ken. And honestly, go to his website, kenrusk.com. That's the simplest thing ever. $129, and you get a book and a course to change your life. Like, if you're not willing to do that, then there's not much anybody else can help you. I mean, that's just a reality, right? If you don't take advantage of the things that people are offering you, then there's nothing anybody can do for you, unfortunately. As much as you wish. Yeah, we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.